Hello. What is up, everyone? How you doing today? Welcome to the class. And sorry about the little delay there. Of course, it wouldn't be live session without a couple of technical glitches. So here we are. We're live. We have a random arm sitting right here. We have a special guest today. How's everybody doing? We've got, about 10 in here right now? Something like that. So, as always, we're going to give them a little bit more time just to join in because we do have about 15 signed up, but I know some people aren't going to make it. Everybody's good. Jean-Felix is okay. Mark Burns. Ross, welcome to True Peak, man. Good to see you here. We got a couple of new faces. We got a couple old faces. So it's fantastic. Let me just get right to it. I'm going to turn this down. And let's welcome Mr. Brendan Dowden.
How you doing, everybody?
AKA Dowden. This is the first time we have a guest here, which is really exciting. We've always had John all the way over in the UK joining us. So it's really cool to have Brendan joining us. He is a Toronto local here, and he's also a Joof artist that how long have we known each other?
4 or 5 years. Well, maybe more from music, but personally 3 or 4 years maybe, and then music 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Connecting through music, which is really cool.
Yeah, and so we've had some good music coming out on Joof together. So that's why I thought it was pretty appropriate to have him in here. Besides the fact that he's local, and it's cool now that not that lockdown's totally eased up, but we're not afraid to have some guests in here from time to time. The other thing too that you may have seen from our group is that Brendan has a very cool school that he teaches. I've watched him start out and grow into a really incredible school. He does YouTube videos. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. So I started maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, starting to create my own courses. I started making a YouTube channel as well because I found that it was a really good way to teach people, to connect with people, and to really grow my brand. And the channel just took off. It gained popularity really quick. A lot of people were really appreciative of the content, and it really drove me to keep on going and actually making more and more content for people. And it's really cool seeing so many people grasping onto Progressive House, where in a city like Toronto, it's not the main focus of music, and then actually being able to meet people from, I know Ross is in here, and Ross is from the UK, and he's one of my students, and it's really cool actually connecting with Ross over music with somebody that I might have never, communicated with. So that's really cool. And so if you recognize me from the channel, it's really cool. Thanks for watching the content, and looking forward to working with Tim now and in the future. So
It's been really awesome to have more content in the group because it's the one thing that I like the most is our community. We have a lot of regulars here. The one thing I like about this class, this is a more advanced class. A lot of them they've been for general artists, but bringing Dowden in, he is I would consider him more technically proficient than me. I am a creative guy. I make things work. I jam the tools together to make something happen. What we're going to focus on today is a lot more technical stuff in terms of, specifically percussion, which is one of the, electronic music needs good percussion. And I know, listening to a lot of your work out there, percussion is one area that is the hardest to master, I think, to make good, clean, organic percussion. Straight up, percussion is probably the most organic part of our music, being in electronic music, and to make it sound real, like a real drummer, or performers. That's really the trick of it. And how do you make it sound natural and real? So he's going to really go in depth on some very cool percussive techniques, and we're going to really help you guys hopefully work on your groove. We've worked on some texturizing and making this deep and wide. Most of you have been in these classes before, but I'm going to go over a few ground rules. We're obviously we like to use YouTube now. It's an unlisted channel, so it's not accessible to the public. And this is so that you get perfect 1080p and clean sound, okay? This link will be disabled after the class, but of course, we're going to have a copy of the video for you to access through the new platform. And just a couple of words about the new platform. It is done on a learning platform, and the video will be accessible through there. Most of you, I don't think, have had the chance to go through it yet. We've gone this route because we're going to do more pre-recorded classes. We're going to keep up with some of the pop-ups, but the pre-recorded are really where it's at for different types of learning methods. So it will be available through there. And we'll probably drop it in the Facebook group as well. I really like the Facebook interactivity. It keeps the community tight. It helps you guys feel safe and willing to share your work. And I would strongly encourage you, if you're not doing that in the other bigger private group, this is a safe space for sharing your work, what we do in the class today, getting feedback. And like I said, that's one of the things that I'm the most proud of True Peak, is that we have such a good student body that are helping one another. And for those of you that have been away for a little while, or you're new to these sessions, feel comfortable. We have there's nobody in our group that I don't trust, especially in these private groups. This is really here for development and growth. And there's a lot of people at a lot of different levels. So feel comfortable sharing what you learn, sharing your tracks. It doesn't go anywhere. And if it does, we're going to have a pretty hard talk afterwards. So hopefully you like the new platform. Hopefully it works well for you once we get that video uploaded. It's a cool streaming place, and it's a way that we can streamline our content a little bit better. Of course, if we have any technical glitches, I apologize in advance. You've seen some of those. It is live. It is the internet. It is computers, and I'll leave it at that. So, any questions, concerns? I'll throw it out here. We have the couple hours kind of planned out here already. If there's things that you want to talk about, if there's questions that you have in real time, we'll just be sitting beside each other, but we're going to focus on Ableton specifically. If you have questions that are pertaining to the content at hand, please feel free to ask. Marston's sitting back here in our little green room area, and he's watching the questions. And of course, whoever's sitting here, there he is. We will watch the questions. We'll answer them in real time. If they're not pertinent to the content, we will save them for later. And of course, we're going to have a good Q&A question time at the end. So Nick says, hey, I'm happy to have this. We're looking to do these every month. I think we did a little poll and everybody said monthly is good. And of course you can pick and choose what you want, but I'm excited about this one. So I don't want to waste any more time. I know Brendan has some good content that we can go into. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in. Any problems, glitches, audio problems, video problems, let us know ASAP so that we can fix them on the fly. But on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Brendan and we will get started. You ready?
Cool. I'm ready.
Okay, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay.
Just so you know, big silver knob.
Okay, cool. All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks to Tim and Marston for having me, first of all. That's really cool to invite me on board. I'm really excited to teach some of the things that I teach in my videos and some of the stuff that I actually haven't taught in my videos. Little tidbits of information that are the really important stuff that can really help you bring your track from, being a good track or being a really good track. These little things that on their own, one or two of those things aren't going to elevate your track all that much. They might be just a little bit of, crispiness on the top end, or it might be a little bit more groovy or something. But when you learn a bunch of these things, 5 or 6 or 7 of these little tips and these elements, they can really bring your whole track up by that little bit for each of them. And then of course, if you have 7 or 8 things, it brings it up 7 or 8%. That's much more noticeable. And that's what I try to teach, is these little things that you might not really think about, but they are going to help.
Oh, we're still in here. 1 sec.
Oh, look, there's 2 of me. That's my twin, my evil twin brother that nobody knows about.
What up?
Oh, sorry.
We're
I'm
focusing so much on the other cameras that we forgot to set that one up right there. So there you go.
There you go. There I am. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay, so I just have a few things here that I'm going to start with, nice and simple. The idea is going to be to take basically a loop that I know most of you or all of you are going to be able to create, and try to elevate it so that it's more interesting, it's going to be more groovy, it's going to be technically I guess, more interesting and a bit more technical. And again, it's going to be just to try and give you a bit of room to improve the overall loop. I like to stress that if you have a really good core loop, you have a really, really good foundation that you can listen to for a long time, like kind of like our intro video had a very percussive intro. If you can listen to it for a long time and not get bored, then everything else that you build around that is just like, it's just like icing on the cake. It's just, you have that really core loop, sounds really great, and you can listen to it for, a minute, minute and a half, even 2 minutes without getting tired of it. Then everything that you add on top of that is just going to elevate the rest of the track. So I'm going to make sure that I have only the percussion on here. I think we have the melodies on. I'm going to turn those off. Okay.
Check, check, 1, 2.
Ableton audio seems to be leaning a bit to the left.
Can you hear us? Is that coming?
Can you?
Yeah, okay.
And we can hear Ableton. And we can hear Ableton too?
Nope.
No Ableton?
No. Yeah, we should be good.
Okay. I don't know exactly where I left off, but it was pretty much just saying you can use no Ableton. Some are saying they can, some are saying they can't.
Just push play for a sec. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Ross. All right. So as I was saying, you don't always have to grab new sounds when you're bringing in new ideas for loops to make them more interesting. So you can use the same hat that you have. You can duplicate it and then change this one up. So something that I like to do quite often is I'll take one hat like this, duplicate it, and then just kind of change the second one so that it's a lot less of an aggressive hat compared to, takes away a lot of the attack, a lot of the transients, a little bit of fade in, make it even softer. And now obviously it's a lot less of an aggressive sound. And then we can go in and I'm just going to actually complement the main hi-hat. So the main offbeat hat that we have, just going in and adding 16th notes surrounding that to make it a bit more groovy. Oops. Something that you need to do when you duplicate is change the ins and outs, because when I go to my MIDI, they're going to play the same note. It's going to play both those. So I'll change this second hat to just an A there. There we go. So the first hat and the second one. And then I'm just going to wrap around like this. We can take a listen. But it's still a little bit monotonous, a little bit robotic sounding because we're just repeating the same thing over and over. So I want to change my velocities. And I can do this manually. And doing it like this, I'm kind of ensuring that I'm not going to choose the same value every time. So that's even more of an organic, humanized feel. Because now we're not just, we could do this once, select it and duplicate it, but now every one of these is going to be a little bit different. And we could do this for a longer loop, we could consolidate this and do it over and over, but for the sake of time, I'll just keep it to these 4. It sounds a little bit swingier, a little bit more groovy, but it's much more subtle. We can include that with the rest of the percussion, and I'll let you listen with both off and on. I'll turn that shaker off, actually. So it's significantly more groovy. It's got a lot more flavor to it than just with the open hat. And we could just drop a shaker in like we have here, but it's definitely not as organic sounding. It's not as, easy on the ears. But we're gonna go into the shaker and actually kind of do the same thing what I did before, taking that attack off. So we listen to the shaker again. Just 16th notes here. There's a bit of velocity variation, but it is still pretty aggressive. So I'm going to actually do the same thing, fade in and fade in here. And if I fade in too much here, it can actually throw the swing off a little bit because you're going to fade in too much and you're going to start to be off the grid. So that's something I learned the hard way by always relying on my fade ins and then realizing that later on in the track it wasn't as groovy. So I have to be careful not to fade in too much. Sounds groovier now. And then we can go back in and add this second one. Turn up a bit. It's pretty quiet, pretty subtle, but it is adding just a little bit of a subtle taste to it. Cool. Going on to this wide hat here. This is a loop, but if we zoom in, we can see that there's quite a bit of tail to that sound, and you can listen to it, and there's a lot of reverb on the sound. And that reverb kind of helps glue everything together. So you can actually do this by adding, reverb to your shakers or reverb to your hat, or you could use a loop like this one. So we can just take a listen. It's a pretty significant difference. So I'm gonna leave it in. I'm gonna turn it down quite a bit, so it's just kind of gluing everything together. Cool. I'll do the claps next, and then we're gonna move on to some percussion. So claps. If you've seen any of Tim's videos, I'm sure you've seen that Tim always changes the position just a little bit of these to make them just a little bit more interesting, a little bit more humanized off the grid. So that's what we're going to do here. But I'm going to take it one step further. So I'm just going to clip this. Let me have those 4. Okay. So again, we can take the same claps. We have this clap that's panned a little to the left. This one that's panned to the right. Together. We get that width. We get that difference in sound that's going to make it more interesting and keep us intrigued for a longer period of time. Especially with those tiny little nudges back and forth. But again, we can duplicate this clap. Go into my ins and outs. Change this one to something that we're not using. And putting this, instead of just layering it up, I'm going to change some of the ones here. So I think it was this one. Okay, so it's these two. So I'll go into the loop, and actually I'll make this loop a little bit bigger. And changing some of these higher notes, the higher clap, to the bottom one, or the one underneath it. Just grabbing randomly here. and then changing that clap slightly. So these are the exact same right now, but if we change this one so that's a little bit different, it's going to be even more subconsciously interesting, because now it's going to be so subtle that you don't really hear it, but you're still going to pick up on it subconsciously, or even consciously if you can really hear it, if you want to make pretty big variation. So maybe some fading in. You could slightly change the pitch. I change the detune. Another thing is changing the tail length. So cut some of that off, fade out a little bit. A little bit too much. And you can see which ones are which. You can see the signal going through. So it's very subtle, but these are the things I was mentioning earlier, that these little nuances and little things that keep adding just a little bit more are going to really elevate at the end of the track. We can listen to that all together now. Cool. One more thing actually before the percussive elements is this shaker groove. So if you don't already own a sample pack that has really nice shakers, I definitely suggest you do. Go out and grab one. They are there's really good shaker packs out there that no matter how hard I've tried, I can't get it sounding as groovy as these ones. They just have such organic sounding grooves, and adding even just like a few, a few dB or just a little bit of volume into your loop with these shaker loops. You can listen to it. Adding just a little bit, even to an already pretty busy loop, can add a very subtle groove. Especially if you don't have something like this one that's kind of gluing it together. It just really brings it to life that much more. Okay, moving on to some of these percussive elements that I'm pretty excited to show you, because they kind of were a game changer for me. A lot of my loops were becoming monotonous. They were becoming a little bit too repetitive. I just found that I was getting sick of hearing them, and I couldn't really understand why the pros and even, more amateur producers were getting these loops that sounded just so much more interesting, even though there wasn't that much going on. There's two ways that you can kind of tackle this. And the one is, I know that Tim talks about a lot, is like the simple complexity versus complex simplicity. So keeping things super simple, but really nailing that groove, really choosing proper placement of your sounds so that every time it hits, it's adding groove, it's adding that push and pull effect, feeling like the track is pushing forward and makes you want to keep on dancing and bobbing your head. And then there's the more complex approach, which is going to still have those groove elements, but they're going to be more on a smaller scale that kind of add up to be a whole series of groovy elements. So I'm going to grab just a random loop, and this is what I really like to do. So I'll use, let's go into, some loops here. I'm just going to search. I'll search perc loop and just see what we get. Something like this. This one's a maybe, and I kind of want to show you one that you probably wouldn't use, or at least I wouldn't use, and show you that you can kind of grab from anywhere to try and get ideas going. That's a cool one too. So I'm going to do two of these here. That's not what I meant to do. Duplicate. Cool. Let's go to this one. Okay, so obviously just playing this along. It does not sound good. It's not adding value, and that's what another thing I want to mention. We want to be adding value to our loops always. We want to be adding things that when we add them in, we have an idea. If it doesn't sound, this one doesn't sound good right away, but we have an idea of where to take it. And if by the end of our idea, by the end of where we're taking it, it's only taking up space, it's not adding that value, it doesn't sound better with it, don't just leave it in because it's, another layer and you think, my song's boring, I want to add more to it. If it's not adding something that you can really be like, yes, that helps, then I would definitely suggest taking it out, because I was guilty of that too, just thinking I had to put stuff in when really if that's the case, it's probably doing more damage than good. So let's go ahead and throw an EQ. And this is first and foremost what I do, is grabbing an EQ and filtering out anything I don't want. And since I don't really want that low end, let's have that sub in it. I definitely don't want that. I'll just leave this here. And I don't want that high hat either, that really sharp ear piercing one. Take us more of that low end. And maybe just a little bit of that snare we can take out as well. There's number 2. I'm just sweeping, trying to find where the snappiness of that snare is. Thank you.
Oh, 1 sec.
No worries. And just let me know when.
Give her.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So now we have this a little bit less aggressive, less obvious sounding loop. And this can bring, fill some of the empty space, especially if we, take the shakers or some of the other elements out. That's kind of taking up space. So a loop that I did not think was going to sound good, well, could have sounded really bad if we just left it in. Right, it's pretty distracting. It's got a lot going on. You can hear all the little nuances and stuff a little bit too obviously. And just by filtering out the really prominent ones and turning the volume down a little bit, sounds pretty good. And because it's a pretty dynamic sound, I'll probably add a compressor on there as well, or even a limiter, something really, some really heavy compression so that it's not jumping around too much. And apparently I don't know how to spell. And that's just going to tame some of that high end stuff. I think I accidentally got rid of something here. Just going to put that back on. Cool. And being such a softer sound and a little bit more in the background, it's going to be more of a subconscious engagement. You're going to not really be latching on to it as much as a hi-hat or a snare, but it's going to be giving you just a little bit of ear candy. And we're going to dive in a little bit more to some effects later on in the video that are going to be pushing this even further and giving us a little bit more of a, ear candy. Okay, cool. So, going to this loop now. So same thing. It's not the grooviest sound, but I know that it's going to add a bit of, I guess, a bit of a repetitive sound, and it could sound interesting, but it also could just not work at all. And this is where a little bit of experimentation comes into play. And if it sounds good, it sounds good. And if not, grab something else. And you don't need to make something work that doesn't work. So that, again, I don't want that low end. I kind of just want that little bit of subtle kind of it's just kind of grabbing the ear just a little bit where we don't really notice it until we're really listening for it. And I can see that there's some really high information here that I don't really want. I don't know if it's not really adding anything, but it could be kind of ear piercing. Cool, super simple. To the right. I think it elevates the loop quite a bit. And it was super simple, and we can go in, you know, and really dissect it, grabbing just the sounds that we want, just the little tits and tats that we want to add in if there's a little bit too much. And that's, do we have time for one more? Tim? Do we have time for one more of these? Yeah? Okay, cool. So this one I grabbed before the session because it's pretty, I wouldn't say bad sounding, but it's just not what I would think to put in this kind of loop, right? It's pretty aggressive sounding. There's a lot of distortion. But it can also work as, it could work as a low end, maybe if you wanted to put some focus into the bass. So I'm going to grab an EQ again. Select compressor. And you can obviously see there's a lot of low end here. If you have a bass line or, you know, well, any sort of bass line, this is going to be really affecting that. It's going to be overlapping with it. We don't want that. Obviously, we're going to filter that out. But when we're adding percussion like this, or like other toms that, you know, might be a little bit cleaner, like the 909 tom. These ones are all pretty distorted as well. This is not bad. It's a lot cleaner of a sound, and it possesses more of a solid tone, where this one's a little bit more distorted. So you have to be careful with your filtering, because if you wanted to add this as a lower element to complement your bass, you could be running into some distortion issues. You could be running into some, maybe the bass isn't tuned properly, but you can use an EQ and just see that we have a pretty strong frequency around here, and we'll just take note of that and try to clean up around it so we still have that solid bass, and then we can tune it after. So we don't have the low end so much, the sub, we have this bass here, and maybe filter out the high end. And it's going to be a bit excessive. I don't want that many. So I'm just going to grab, maybe I'll cut this out right here. And we'll just leave everything else. So we'll split. Go to that. And then I'll just and you know what? I don't want these here either. So I'm going to move this maybe over here. One. And keep it there. And I don't want this coming in where the kick is, so I'm going to fade that out. Okay. Cool. That sounds pretty good. I think this is just slightly off. Just going to delete that and move this over. Try that. It's just the one that's off. Another thing to take note of in loops is sometimes they're not exactly where you want the notes to be. So I'm just going to move these over a little bit. I don't like that it's not right on the 16th. Cool. So that's adding some cool sound. Really quickly, I'm just going to duplicate it. And one thing that I really like to do with my sounds is just change the octave of them. Change this to beats and just test it out, see if it works. Put it up an octave or down an octave. Maybe try putting this one down an octave. And we'll put this one up an octave. Cool. And then maybe we can move this over. When you do change your octaves, you want to make sure that you're changing the EQ as well, because it's going to be a different frequency. And let's hear how this sounds. Sounds pretty cool. It's probably not something that I would think to write right away because it's a bit more like mechanical sounding, a little robotic sounding, but it sounds pretty cool. It's something different that kind of pushes the envelope of what I would write, and it might be something that I would use. And that's the whole point, is just experimenting and trying to push the sounds that you already have a little bit more, so you're not just relying on new samples all the time, because then if you put in too many samples that from different families, they can start to sound like they're kind of competing for each other's space. But also, don't just rely on that, because sometimes grabbing from different families can also help in terms of the track. So just try both and see what you can get if you are struggling with finding one of them. Good.
Nice.
Cool. Did you want to take over the bass line?
Let's get back in.
Cool. All right. Tim's going to take over for a little bit, and we're going to start focusing on the bass elements, I believe.
Sick.
Chair's nice and warm for you.
Nice. I like warm chairs. All right. That was awesome. I'm gonna swap these out. He brought over his own mouse and keyboard and headphones so that we feel totally comfortable. Where are we here? Hello.
Classic.
With 3 mics going on, 2 keyboards. Cool. Awesome. Okay. There was a lot to take in there. And I know that there are different levels of experience with this type of content. So if you have questions, now's a good time to ask them about this kind of stuff. But I'm going to hammer a few things home that he covered because it's very important. What he's doing is so crucial. And there's a few things that I want to glaze over and give a little bit of psychological context to them. But first, I'll answer Nick's question, which he asked a little while ago. What do you start with percussion when you make a track? And to me personally, I don't know about you, Brendan, but for me it depends. Sometimes I'll start with a kick and a hat, and it'll be dependent on our creativity. But this level of percussion is generally done later, once you know the vibe of the track a little bit more. What's your approach on that?
Yeah, so sometimes when I'm writing, a lot of the time I start with either kick and bass line or kick and some of my percussion. I usually like to get a basic groove going, hi-hat, snares, or claps, and then like a shaker, and then 1 or 2 percussive elements, because then if I feel the groove's kind of moving along, it pushes me to keep writing. And then I like to have 1 or 2 elements that are a little bit more tonal to kind of set not so much the energy, that's kind of to do with the groove, but I'll set the key of the track with that. And then when I start to add in more elements, I try to keep them within that key so that it complements a little bit more. And then as the track builds more and more, and you kind of, as you're producing it, you get bored of hearing it so much, that's when I'll go in and be like, okay, where else do I need to add a few more elements, or take out elements if I've already overdone it as well. So most of the percussion is done as I'm writing to kind of help build the track, but there is a little bit from the beginning that I try to put in just to get that solid groove going. So I know I have something like a strong foundation to work off of.
Mm-hmm. And there are just there are rules with percussion too, right? There are a lot of timing rules that we need to adhere to. A lot of the things that he's doing right now with this last tom loop, you couldn't do out of the chute. So it depends on what kind of creative mood you're in. Sometimes I don't do percussion until way late, but the kick, for timing, some hats, some claps, those are definitely crucial to get some timing going. Mm-hmm. But this level of percussion, I do this very late in the game as well. And so I'll talk about this. I'll talk about these aspects in a little bit more depth. Do you ever work off of 4 on the floor? Work off of it like a breakbeat or something? I don't personally. I usually just use a straight 4/4 kick because that's my genre. A lot of this stuff is genre dependent too, right? Depending on the style that you make, whether, I think most of us, if not all of us, work within, techno, trance, progressive, house,
yeah,
right? So
not quarters,
yeah. But I know there's a definite influx in break beats right now, thanks to Sasha and
the bicep.
The progressive world is definitely adopting that, and it can be done very good. It can also be done badly very easily, and especially with that kind of stuff, your percussion is crucial, absolutely crucial, even more than techno, even more than progressive in a lot of cases. If you're getting into break beats where that is a percussive focus, right? So this stuff is even more crucial. Cool. Any other questions while you got, just drop them in and we're watching. So there are a few things that I want to really dive into here that I need to emphasize a few things here with percussion. From what I've seen in the class, in the group, do not underestimate the value of subtle sounds. I want you to listen to your environment right now. I just want you to take a second. If you have headphones on, take them off for a second and just listen. Okay, just for a few seconds. We're just going to listen to the environment. If you're in a silent place, there is still ambience. There is still white noise, pink noise. There is traffic outside. There are people moving around. There are certain elements that you are in that are very hard to recreate. Okay, when you listen to percussion in your DAW, when you put your first hats in, you don't get this kind of ambience. You don't get this kind of atmosphere. It's a natural thing with live percussion. I say this over and over again. Why do we love live percussion? Why do we love watching drummers bang on the stage, or maybe a conga circle on a beach someplace? What's going on besides the hits of those drums? Right? You have to, this is one thing that when producers go into Ableton or into their software, they don't realize that when you're provided samples, it doesn't include that. So it's so important. And Brendan really hit it with this last one, especially where you're taking loops and you're starting to chop them up to give that ambience and to give that effect. And the way that he's EQing, those specific movements are so important to create ambience. Every percussion that you lay in there doesn't have to be a focal point. In fact, if there are many different pieces of percussion that you don't even want them to know exist, because it's creating that ambience, it's creating that atmosphere. And those are the subtle things that most up and coming producers miss because they don't take the time, right? So I'm going to look at a couple things here that he did. Okay, specifically here in these three, right? Like this right here. Here, I'm going to backtrack a little bit here, okay? There's a couple stereotypes about samples and loops, right? Something like this, where you see this, if you've been in one of my classes before, you know that I say this can be very detrimental to your groove. Using loops from a loop pack, they can destroy your creativity in a lot of cases. That doesn't mean that I don't use loops, right? This is a track that I had started, right? I have loops in here that I've been using, but how do you use them? And so what a lot of these loop packs give you are they are ideas, and they create the groove for you. Now that could help if it's early on. But you don't want it to diminish what you've created. So what Dowden is doing, and what I do with my loops as well, is you are picking very specific moments of those loops to influence your track, because you can destroy the groove, you can change the theme of your song, you can do all these things. And people think, this is where it drives me nuts, people think that loops are shortcuts. This is where I have the problem with it. Like, if you get a loop pack, I just use the loop pack. Those are shortcuts. That's the method of looping that I don't condone. Okay. Yes, it can be creative. Yes, it can be inspiring to your creativity, but it can also take away from you using your brain to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that, I always teach this first and foremost. Why are you doing it and how are you doing? Because every sound needs a purpose. So what he's doing in here is very specific to the track. This tom loop is sick. This, what he did here just with this one loop, yes, he took that, he moved them around, he made it fit the track. We already had an established groove for him to be able to do that. He's working within it. And that's what I want to go a little bit deeper in terms of developing this groove. So now, in the case of, Nick's question, let's pretend like we had no track. Okay, let's pretend like we are just kind of coming into this now with no groove. We're going to use our ears with our eyes, and we're going to use our brain to figure out that groove. For me, and I don't know if Brendan works the same way, when I sit down, I don't always have all the ideas. If you've done a class with John works sort of backwards from me. He plays so many gigs, he's inspired so often. When he comes back, he has very limited time. He takes an idea, he puts it in. That is the core of the song, and then he reverse engineers it, right? However, most producers, and I think a lot of people in this class, when you sit down to a blank page, you don't know what you're going to write. I'm not some genius that just has the whole track written in my head. I've done it maybe twice in my music career, where I know every sound that I want to put in there. It doesn't happen, which means when you sit down, you need to develop and build. Okay? So let's look. We are going to build around this. Now, I really like what he did. So I'm going to do a little bit of a shortcut here, and we're just going to work with this because I like what he's done here. I'm just going to just get rid of this. And we're going to duplicate it. Whoa, that's very medium. But let's do this. Okay, we're going to work in this. We're going to build the bass around the percussion. Okay, let's just pretend like we were inspired today to build this percussion. We were just at this trippy, conga circle at Burning Man, and we want to make that kind of music now. Let's see what we got. We're gonna take the robot sound out a little bit. Okay. If you want to hear cleanly, you can put on those headphones too, and or you can listen to the speakers too. This is totally different having somebody here with us in these classes. It's kind of cool. So I am going to have a bass section here. And some of this is going to be, you know how I'm going to approach this, but I'm going to specifically work around his percussion. We are going to do groove elements. I'm not going to make some slam and bass line. This is not going to be the focal point. That's not what we're doing. We are going to extend on what he's done with percussion, and we're going to add more melodic tones to it, which will in turn create a groove and hopefully work into a bass line. So I'm going to do this a little bit in real time with some sounds that I have created. We're just going to delete this. And this is where, when I say loops can destroy your groove, it also destroys your focus sometimes if you're not approaching them correctly. If you're not approaching them as a paintbrush where you will be painting with multiple colors, right? If you just want to put blocks down on the floor, use loops, right? But this is where you need to slow down, take your time. You don't have to build a track in a day, but you can build a sequence in a day, right? So what we're going to do here, and this applies to any percussion that you add in. I've got, are we muted? Yes. Let's see what we got. Cool. It's a deep, plucky sound. And I've just been working with this a little bit. So it's a nice little sound. Okay, I think we're working in A. This is what's most important here, is to sit and listen. And I know that this can get frustrating and tiresome when you've been doing this for 3 hours straight, and it can get a little bit repetitive and boring. This is where we start to add some interest to it. Subtle, subtle. Listen to where the sounds aren't. Hey, where did our... Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. We just chill. We have a nice sub bass going on, by the way. Boom. 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 Yep. A little tone, but it's in between the sounds. Okay, I've showed you in the past. I've showed you how to select them all and see where they're laid out in the sequences. This is part of the ear training process. Simple, simple, simple. If this is a percussion-based track, we're gonna just add a feeling to it just with very simple bass lines. Okay. One of the biggest problems I see in overloading a track is that you feel that because you have this space to add melody and sound, you need to fill that space. It's not true. We have put a lot of time and effort into this percussion. We're going to just build a groove. We're just going to add this element to groove to. We want people's shoulders to do this, right? Okay, let's do another one. I don't know what this is. Low. This is a nice low sound, but it's got some higher frequencies to help bridge the gap. I want to bring that sub up a level. So I added a new bass line. We're bringing it up another audible level in pitch. We're going to take it up one more notch. So now we've added another sound. Where do we have space to work? Complexify a little bit. Okay. This is really just based on how we had it before. This here, I'm just going to play with the frequency, the cutoff frequency a little bit. We're just going to pull it down. Right there. That's where we want it. There's no pressure to add too much, okay? In fact, I think this is too complicated, okay? Another thing that people do is they're going to take this and they feel like the bass line has to go on and fill all this space between the kick, right? It could work, right? But it doesn't give people the chance to chill and vibe with the track. People are actually cool with just chilling, whether this is trance or techno or progressive. This is going to repeat for the next 6 minutes, okay? Slow down, man, slow down. So this is even too complex for me. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna highlight this, we're gonna duplicate it, and we're gonna double the length so that this loop is twice as long, okay? And I'm going to take that out. So we have doubled the length. The loop is twice as long, but just adding that one note at the end here it resets the brain. It resets the subconscious attachment to the loop. And that's the most important thing that you can do. We're doing it with a bass line right now, but we're going to go back and we're going to do it with percussion as well. Simplicity is the key. It's so tempting. Like, look at all these little squares, man. Look at all these notes and all these little squares. Like, I just want to fill them up. I just want to do all the things, right? It could work. No, we're not doing that today. So let's listen to this longer loop now. Okay? Every bass sound has a purpose. And we also intentionally did that by listening, when we started, to where the percussion is hitting, right? Now, we're going to do this again. I want to do it a little more complicated. So let's just, next time you work in something like this, I want you to practice, rather than adding up, I want you to add across. I want you to lengthen the loop rather than building the loop. If your track sounds boring, I want you to try just simplifying it, doubling the length of the loop, okay? Copy what you've done and extending it. This is going to change the way that you approach music. Now we have a 15-second loop, right? We're gonna add a little bit. We're gonna add a little more variety here, right? That we want. Let's try that. At the end of a long loop like this, you can speed it up a little bit. It will tell them that there's a change coming, right? And that's the beginning of the loop. Even though this has been a loop over and over again, right? Really, you'd make one little subtle change like this at the end, the brain knows now. Oh, I'm not even playing this. Here we go. Okay, but I may do a little bit more with this if it was my own track, but for the sake of this example, I think this is giving you what you need to show you that one single note resets the brain. And so look at it. I mean, now we can loop this, and guess what? We can do it again. We can do it as long as we want. We can double this again, right? And I know some of you are already doing this, but to watch it again and again. In fact, I will go so far, when I get into this stuff, I will do 4-minute segments this way. I will make such long loops with minor changes. And going into what he's talking about with the percussion, the longer you can make your sequences, intentionally making them different, unique, and changing the vibe in such a subtle way that you're not changing the groove, you're not changing the swing of what their shoulders and their feet want to do, you're just resetting their brains in different ways to keep your track interesting, okay? So like, for example, here, we've got from a 15-second loop to a 30-second loop now. Now if this loops, it's gonna sound the same. So I wanna keep it all the same, and I wanna go to this last. Okay? That's it. I want you to try this in the next week, okay? I want you to just add one note. All we've done is taken a 4/4 loop, doubled it, made one subtle change. Take that, doubled it, make one subtle change. Let's listen to the whole thing again, and I want you to feel how your brain resets while it's staying interesting. It's a loop, but we're changing it so that it gets interesting with the most subtle ways. brain resets. That is actually the perfect length of a sequence to add a new percussion line, or possibly I have another good. I don't want to add all these melodies in, but I want to take. I have something like this. Okay, this is just a little thing I recorded from the Prophet. This could work. Okay, just a little bit going on here. You don't have to add a lot. Oh, we lost there. Where did that sound come from? This is something that I already had in here, right? I want you to just look at this like building blocks now. I know that it's so easy to sit in a 4/4 loop or, an 8-beat loop or whatever you may be working in. These are the moments, and we're going to go and look at this in percussion shortly and how to build this into your percussion as well. These are the transitional and melodic properties. These are the things that are in your track that reset the reset. We have created this long groove. This loops twice. Okay. I don't want to keep doing this. Okay. I may, but in this case, we're going to reset this doubled up reset loop, if that makes sense here. So we've got another one right in here. Okay. Any questions about this so far? I know this seems like when we do this kind of stuff, we're flying through it and it seems that it's very simple. This is what he mentioned: simple complexity, complex simplicity, right? These are the great tracks. So let's, I think that's good to add into the groove. I'm going to leave that now that we've got a little bit more of a bass line. You can feel free to mess with the, I'll show these guys real quick, but the other way that we can complexify this and make it evolve is through this cutoff frequency, right? Simple. Little bit of a frequency cutoff frequency. Okay, so we have something to work with now. I think, yeah, let's, I'm going to add one more thing in here. No, I'm going to pass it back to you. Okay. So you can do this toning. Now we have, basically what we're doing is we're building up some tonal properties or some melodic properties. So now that we've got a little bit more of a melodic groove, I'm going to pass it back. Any questions, concerns, let us know. I'm going to pass it back to Brendan now, and he can take over with some more percussion stuff.
Cool. Okay. All right. That was fun. Gotta swap out the keyboards again. He's such a good teacher, eh? Tim has a really good way of explaining arbitrary things that nobody else can explain. Like when he's saying stuff that when he says it, it makes sense, but you'd never be able to be like, yeah, this is what I'm thinking. But he says it, and you're like, you know what I'm thinking. So
appreciate you.
Yeah. Cool. So, scooch this over. Cool. So it doesn't look like we have any questions or anything. So that's okay. And of course, chime in whenever. And if you want to save them for the end, that's good. Try and have, some questions for the end, because that will definitely help us answer what you guys are, you're gaining from this or you're lacking from this. So we are covering quite a few topics. and really trying to get everything as much as drilled into you guys as much as possible, so you can leave this and actually build something from this, from what you learn. So I mentioned earlier that we're going to do some a little bit of tuning. So now that we have the bass line, and we have that little accent to the bass line, we have the key, we have a bit of a vibe now. The vibe is, again, another kind of arbitrary term because it's something that you feel and it's something that you can't really put, everybody interprets it differently and stuff. But generally speaking, we have an energy now. We have a feeling of the track, and that can help us with not just the groove, but the choosing of the key. If we want it to be more of a happy track, we could put it into a major key. If we want it more of a darker track, we can or a sadder track, we can put it in minor, or like a diminished key or something that can really make it sound darker. And we do that with our melodies, but we can also do that with percussion. And one of the simplest ones is a tom, because it has a lot of tonal weight. So we will start with that. We also have this, I never know if it's a clave or a clav or a clave. I don't know. Maybe Tim can enlighten me, but we have this.
I say clav, but I don't know.
I don't know what it is either. Somebody in the chat who knows, please let us know, because I still don't know, and no one's ever I like intentionally leave it out of my videos on YouTube because I don't want people to be like, bruh, you've been saying it so wrong. But anyway, so we have this one, and it obviously has a pretty, you can see it in the EQ, you can hear that it's a very solid tone. And we can check the key by using our EQ, and we can see that it looks like it's an E. And we can use a tuner as well, but sometimes a tuner doesn't actually grab efficiently. We could try, see if it'll grab it. So it looks like it's a little bit out of an E, just very, very slightly. And then we can use the scale that we're in, or the key that we're in, and make sure that we are in key with the track. And this is an E, so it works. Right? It adds that little bit of, not melody, but
we're gonna change this up a little bit. Sorry, I'm just gonna grab.
oh yeah, sorry, one sec.
Oh, that's the wrong
Left.
one. It's upside down.
Oh, classic.
I'm gonna move you over here now.
Do you want me to put the groove pool up? Or
Do I know?
the groove pool? It opens up a little square. That's what I do in mine. I'll show you. Oh, shoot. Sorry, one sec. Where is... Oh, it's here. There.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then that way it'll
Perfect.
be a nice little spot.
Yeah.
I think I pressed something.
Yep, it's okay. Just shrink it back down. And we are gonna stick you right in there. Now you're looking the wrong way, but it's okay. Cool.
Looks like I'm in a timeout. I'm like in the corner. Okay. Okay, cool. So tonality, key, E, and it's adding that not so much melody, but it is adding a kind of like a vibe in terms of key and melody. So it's not specifically a melody, but it is. And you can hear as soon as we put it out of key, it should sound pretty pretty different. Where am I here? Controls. Should sound a little off. Some notes will work. Some will sound really bad because they'll be out of key. And being that it's just slightly out of E, I'm going to go into the D tune and just turn that up a little bit so that it gets closer to the actual E here. A little bit D-tune is fine. It can actually make it sound even more, humanized and realistic, because if the, real drums aren't always perfect pitch like we have in here. Cool. So that is essentially what we want to be doing to add that bit of texture. And we can do this with other instruments as well. So like I said, the tom is really good. The 909 tom is really clean. I think I grabbed it earlier. There is is one specifically that's in Ableton. I'm trying to remember if it's in the 909 pack. If we go to drum hits. Maybe it's the same one. That's okay. Okay. Let me just try grabbing a different one then. So what I'm looking for is a tom that doesn't have too much distortion or too many harmonics that are kind of all over the place. So if it has a bit of harmonics, it's good. Trying to find a good tom. Apparently I'm struggling here. Perfect. Okay, so you can definitely hear the difference between one of these and one of these. So I'll grab that. I'm going to throw it in. Going to use a drum rack. So first I'll just throw it over here. And then I like to use drum rack instead of using audio for a lot of my drums, personally. And I'm going to grab that and throw it in. Ta-da! Okay, moving back here. Mr. Tom. And again, I want to be like what Tim was doing is we want to be complementing the groove. We don't want to be pulling away from it, and we want to be respecting what we've already put in. Unless, you know, the idea that you have is to change the groove because for whatever reason you want to change it. But if you just start going in here all willy-nilly and throwing in random hits, even if it is groovy on its own, you know, if it is a groovy pattern, it might pull away from the groove we've already established. So we have to listen to the track and kind of appreciate what we've already done. All right, I'm not going to put toms right where I'm hitting here because I know I already have some. So we have to be a little articulate of where we go. Back. Okay, that's just something very basic. Quite a bit going on. I'll fine tune it after, but just to get the right key down. So I'll open this back up. Again, we can grab a tuner. And you see it's a little off. Something to note with toms is because they can be sustained, and you can see in the waveform here. It's obviously a pretty clean waveform. It's essentially just an entire sine wave, and they've probably just used some sort of pitching, or they've layered it with something else to give it that transient. But it can lower in pitch. So it'll start at one pitch, and it can drop down in pitch to make that tom or that kicks do this as well. And sometimes it's hard to identify the key. Sometimes it's hard to maintain that note because it might go from, you know, D to a C or D to a D flat or something. That might not be in the key of your track, and then it kind of sounds a little off. So I like to generally cut out the tail end of them if this happens. And now not seeing my tuner working, so I'll use an EQ. Oh. Okay, so it looks like it's B. So I'll open up the controls. And we'll go down two semitones, or two semitones to an A. We can hear that now it sounds a bit better. It sounds more in key, but we are still a little bit off. So I'll go up. And this is a pretty clean sound. It is adding a bit of value. I know that Tim has something planned for the next little bit where I think he's going to expand on this a little bit more, and I think that it'll sound actually pretty cool with the sound that we have here. So now that we have it in the right key, we have a little bit of a groove going. And it is overlapping with some of the sounds, and something that I tried for a long time to avoid was not overlapping sounds. I would put, and not to say that to do with layering specifically, taking two sounds, putting them together to create one, but overlapping sounds in a loop, I would always try to, go into each individual area inside my piano roll, and if there was already a note here, I would avoid that. I would be like, no, I can't put something here because something already is there. And it really held me back from not only experimenting with layering sounds on an individual basis, but it really only gave me like 16 notes to work with in this tiny area. And I would start to get frustrated that I couldn't put things places, and I would be like, no, I already have something there. That's not what I needed to do. I could just experiment with it. And sometimes putting sounds on, at the same time or once, like Tim was doing in the much longer loops, doing that once in a while makes it even more interesting because it's not what you're expecting. And sometimes this works really well. Sometimes it doesn't work at all, but it'll be pretty obvious to you once you do it. And I think that it complements us well. It's not a very obvious that we're listening to, right? Like it's hitting somewhere, this one here. Right, it's hitting this tom the same time that it's hitting this one, and it's complementary. It's not detrimental. It's not hurting the groove. It's not hurting the sound. It's actually complementing it. And of course, fine tuning with EQ and more complex things, side chaining, compressing from each other if necessary. Those are things that you have to worry about. But for the sake of this and just the creative aspect of it, it sounds good. Cool. I'm just going to check here. Okay, and we know we're in the key of the bass as well. So what else could we do to the sound? We could duplicate. I'll actually just do this inside here. And like I always like to do, I like to transpose by one octave like I did before. And just see how it sounds. Maybe go one more octave, see if we can push that. Or it doesn't even need to be an octave. It can be, a fifth or a seventh, a couple semitones. Cool. Okay, so I'll add that. And I will just add a simple delay on there. And the loop is getting a little convoluted. There is a lot going on, but we can take that out after. Just showing some good examples here. I'm just going to shorten this loop. Pretty simple, but it does the trick. And then I always want to be sure that I am EQing, especially with low end information like this, because it could definitely be affecting our bassline and our kick. So you can see there's tons of low information here. Definitely want to scoop that out. Sometimes toms get a little bit like boxy or muddy around this area too. Scoop a little of that out. Okay. And I'm just going to copy this one over to the second one because save me some time. And maybe even a little bit out of that. Maybe don't want it so percussive this. Just the high end. And as Tim was saying before, these more ambient sounds, these sounds that are gonna just, you know, tickle your eardrums just a little bit and add just a subtle taste on top of your loop, or, you know, in behind your loop, however you want to interpret that. But sounds that are softer and that you're not gonna pay attention to so much. You know, a lot of the big prog artists, Guy J, and Hernan, and they use so many percussive elements that it's almost impossible to even decipher what they're doing. And personally, I love that. I love that I don't know what they're doing, and I also hate it because then I don't know what they're doing, so I can't do it myself. But it's just that they have so many layers that they've chosen and placed them so efficiently that it sounds great. And it's not easy to do, and it can very easily be overdone. So you have to be very well practiced in it, and it's something that I've struggled with for a long time because, like I said, it's very difficult, but it really can elevate a track. But the reason that it's almost better to, I mean, it's better to practice it, but a reason that it can so easily be overdone is there's too many sounds that are just convoluting the track. There's too many things taking up that space, and as Tim was saying, and as I was saying before, sometimes simple is better. So if you want to keep it simple, that's, of course, that is so good. And if you want to try and make things more complex, that's also really great. You just have to make sure that whatever you are doing, you are confident in what you're doing, and you are making decisions based on adding value to the loop, adding value to your song, that you're not just adding things to sound like someone else without really knowing what you're doing properly, in the sense that it could sound bad. And, you know, if you try things, you want to experiment too. And if you try something and it works, that's great. But if you try something, you're unsure of it, you think, you know, Guy J did this, so I'm going to do it, and it's going to sound just the same. You really have to be careful not to overdo it, because it's very easy to overdo something in terms of adding a lot of elements. Hope that makes sense. Even something like this delay. Sounds kind of cool, but in the rest of the track, it might be too much. Because then we have that clave, whatever coming in. Cool. One more thing I wanted to touch on for sure is, again, dealing with tonal instruments and sounds is a little bit less, I guess, like less not so much by the book, but instead of using a percussive element, I wanted to show you using a sound, like a synth, or you know, even just like a preset in here that we have. I did grab one before. I think it's this one here, but it's a little bit out of tune, so I'm gonna grab something else. Just going into Ableton's presets, we can go into, let's grab an analog. Even there's percussive ones in here, I believe. Maybe it's not an analog, maybe operator. Okay, so there's some percussive sounds. Oh, there's just the one. Let's see what else we have. Wavetable, percussive. This will be good. Okay, so might not be the best examples. Maybe we'll just grab just a wavetable and make something ourselves. And we'll just call this so the idea is to create a sound that is a bit unique, because it's not just percussive. It's not a sample that you just choose. And you know, there's tons of samples that will be good examples of this, but I'm just using something as simple as a pluck. So I'm just going to make a pluck in wavetable. I'm trying to, one sec, guys, sorry. Tim? Sorry, how do you get rid of this?
It should just go away. It's really weird.
You can tell I'm not a Mac user. Sorry guys, one sec.
I'll just make it go away. It should absolutely just go away.
Oh,
It's staying on the screen. It's so weird.
it's gone on my side now.
Yeah, well, that's at least good. And just in case it comes. Okay, go for it.
Cool. All right. Here. Okay, so just making this. I was gonna make it an operator, but I'll use this. Okay, so just a basic. I'm just gonna grab the MIDI information here. I'm actually gonna replace that tom with this one. And maybe we'll change the MIDI as well. But for now, I'm just gonna make a super quick pluck. Attack, and we'll put the filter on. Remember, I don't want the low end either. 24. And I'll grab an EQ as well. And we'll add a second oscillator with a separate second octave. Let me turn it down a little bit. I'll do a square. A little bit of resonance. And up. Cool. What else could I do to this? We could add, don't add too many effects yet. Let's add an erosion. This is something that I do in a lot of my my percussive elements. Sorry, my higher percussive elements like hi-hats, rides, claps and stuff. It's essentially a filter that really pushes the resonance up. So it's like a bit of a saturator slash filter, and it can brighten or add a little bit of punch really subtly. Don't really think it's doing too much. It's not really adding value, so I'm just actually gonna get rid of it. And that's kind of a lesson to be learned as well. It's like, I thought it might sound good, doesn't sound good, don't need to hold on to it. Okay, that's fine for now. Press the right button. And we can just listen to how it sounds. I'm gonna push this up one octave though. It's a bit more percussive. And go to the A. Right, and then adding something again, like maybe a little bit of reverb. This is definitely more subtle. If we wanted it to be more like what Tim added with the bass line, we could turn up the volume. Right, but I'm kind of adding kind of what the clav thing is adding that bit of texture as well, and the melody. And this is something that, like I said before, a lot of the prog guys do. Mariano Molino, I think I'm saying that name right. He does this a lot. Like, you listen to his tracks, and he'll have so many little melodies, little percussion sounds or percussive sounds, and little tonal percussion that come in, like, so subtly, and they add so much to the track. It's like 4 or 5 elements over the course of like 10 or 15 seconds, and it's just one-offs. They'll just do it like he'll do it like 1 or 2 times. Interaxis as well is another really, really good progressive. I think they're a duo, and they do the same thing. It's just like their songs are 8-9 minutes long, but then they have just these such subtle things that you barely even hear until you're really listening for it. This sound isn't that interesting. It's just a pluck, so we can add something. Maybe try a resonator. Resonators are kind of cool in there. Maybe put it up to the D. Try this one. Put it down to A, sorry. Turn the gain up. Might make it a little bit more interesting. Another really cool thing, and I won't go too much more into this because I know that Tim's going to be covering stuff like this, is it's a filter. I think it's called Follower. Oh, no, Wanderer. Wanderer. And this filter is really, really cool. It's like a delay filter. So it has 3 separate bands, and it will add different filtering onto the different bands as well as repeating them like a delay, and you get really, really cool atmospheric stuff. It sounds groovy. So that sounds actually pretty cool, and it didn't really take much. It's just a basic, really, really basic sound. We'll try it without the resonator as well. More percussive. I mean, that sounds pretty good. Going further with this would be, adding a little bit of EQ, shaping the sound a little bit more, compression, saturation, just driving the character a little bit more of the sound. But I think that it is, again, adding value. It's adding more to this loop without going overboard to the point where we have to either, take something out to make room for it, or it's just too distracting. Let me see what we have next. Bass. I think that's probably all I'm going to cover for now. I know that Tim wants to cover some of the effects that I am trying not to cover because I know that they're going to work so well, but I will let Tim take care of that.
I wonder if we're going to do the same techniques.
I might have seen your notes, and I was like, that was something I was going to do, so yeah, probably.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I'm going to let Tim take over. Does anybody have any questions?
It's pretty quiet chat today.
Yeah. Talk to us. We're lonely in COVID times.
We have each other.
We have each other. Okay, cool. Well, I'll give it back over to Tim, and
Let's do it.
we'll see what he has in store.
I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Pressure's on. The Jamaica.
This is so different to swap out seats like this. Cool. This is a lot to take for a class. How are you guys feeling about all of this stuff? Can you share the names of those artists you mentioned?
The ones that I mentioned?
Yeah.
Is my mic still on?
Mariano Molino?
Mariano Molino. So it's Mariano, like Mario Party, but Mariano. And then
Mell.
Mellino.
Yeah.
It sounds Italian, I think. And then
He's Argentinian.
Argentinian. Oh, okay. So it's Spanish, I guess. And then there is also another one that's his name is very similar to Mariano's, but he's a little bit more tech oriented. Who else did I say? Jeremy Olander. I'm a beginner, relatively speaking. This is a lot of time. Oh, cool. Well, yeah, it's definitely a lot to take in, but it's definitely it's really good that you're here and that you're learning. That's a really important thing. So, really glad you're here.
Greg is since we started working together through these classes, he's expanded. I mean, I'll just speak to you, Greg, because you're here, but you've expanded so far in terms of understanding music. So coming from a DJ background, and then understanding the depths of what makes a track. So of course, in your case, if you're now that you're getting into the music production, you're learning more about it, but more specifically, and to those other ones in the class that are focused DJing, and haven't quite crossed that bridge into music production, what you can take here is the layers of complexity that's built into a track. Specifically, you're used to, many of you are used to a DJ mixer, right? So when you look at an EQ in Ableton, I want you to think about those specific spots. So when you want to fine tune your mixes, when you want to really, like on a Pioneer mixer, you got low, mids, and highs, right? So you need to understand where the cutoffs are. What we're doing with an EQ8 in Ableton, it translates to a Pioneer mixer. So when you want to control the clav or the tom, you can see where those specific frequencies are and how to control it. Why does Digweed mix so smooth? Why does Hernan, why is he one of the smoothest DJs in the industry? Why? Well, he understands the complexity and the textures and the icing and the butter that goes into making these sounds, and where that knob is situated to add or remove those sounds, right? When you're mixing two tracks together, you train your ear, and this is part of it. You're going to get there. You're going to train your ear to understanding when we play a sound like this, and you won't be able to see this, but where does that sit in an EQ? Now, if you've just been DJing, you may have an idea on a Pioneer mixer from trial and error, but being able to look at that specifically, hear it, and knowing where to control that on a mixer or where to go into your EQ. And I do want to go into this a little bit more detail now in terms of how to add effects and using EQ, because it all plays together. What he's talking about with these sudbeat artists and these really smooth progressive artists, they are masters. And even those of you that were in are Beyond the Basics class with John, the level of layers, the number of layers of a bass line that just sounds like one sound, right? How did that get created? And Dowden's gone into a little bit of detail with the clav, with the tom, with the percussion loop of making the layers, but we're going to go into even more detail. I'm going to show you a few of those subtle things. And I know that, earlier I asked you to take your headphones off and listen to the ambience of the room. Why? There are sounds going on, whether you're in a quiet room, your bedroom, whether you're in a closet, I don't know. There is still an ambience that's going on in there. And so we have to, as artists, we have to take the time, and I know that can be very hard sometimes, to slow down and focus on why the sounds are coming through the way they are. There is an ambience everywhere you go. It's impossible to go anywhere without ambience. There's, I think, one room at a university that is a vacuum sealed, soundless room. And what ends up happening is you lose your equilibrium. There is no, you have balance because of the way that sound interacts, the vibrations and the waveforms are interacting with your ears, right? So if you are going in and just making clean reproductions of sounds, you are going to sound robotic, you're going to sound fake, you're going to sound like, like you're working on the grid, and you want to sound like an artist. This is our battle, man. This is the difference between the greats and the wannabes, right? This is good and great. That's the difference, is taking the time to do what we've been doing today and what I'm about to show you, even more so with the percussion. Okay. I don't know if this fits, but any kick tips, things to avoid, watch out for? We can talk a little bit about kicks at the end, I think. That's a good idea. It's one of my worst subjects, so I'll probably leave it up to Dowden. I just, there are tips for sure. So let's not take away from this right now, but we can do a little bit at the end with Q&A. But a kick drum can be an entire class in itself, right? But I'm not one that fusses that much over kicks. I know what I want to hear, and I search for it. I'm
fussy over kicks.
He's fussy.
I'm very fussy, and I spend like so long on my kick, and then I just get a new sample and it sounds better, and I'm like, okay, don't know why I didn't do that in the first place. But yeah, we'll definitely talk about that, because it is it's one of those things it's a simple concept, but it's so deep.
And also in terms of tuning, like because you have sub frequencies, because you have the snap of the kick, which isn't quite as tuned, but you have a sub frequency, a mid range frequency, and a kick. That's where you can destroy your track. That you have a wide. We'll get into it in a bit. I don't want to take away from this right now, but yes, there's an entire topic on there. We absolutely can. Cool.
And remind me of those artists too, because I'll write some artists for you guys to check out, because I think you'll benefit from hearing from this lesson specifically. Hearing and from what we're teaching you now, and going back with a new perspective and hearing these artists that do these things, and you'll start to pick up and be like, now I know what they do. Now I know that they have these little nuances you can start to pick up. So I'm going to write some down right now, and then I'll at the end of the class I'll let you know.
And I've given everybody a warning before that once you start to know these things, the music's never gonna be the same.
Yeah.
When you start to pick up on it, like in our
can't unhear it.
You can't unhear it. You can't stop trying to figure out why and how, which means that you lose some enjoyment of the music as producers. But we're nerds like that, right? And the music will never be the same once you understand. So it's not too late to back out of this class, right? If you don't want to know some of these things, because you'll never listen to music again the same way. So let's go back into Ableton. And okay, cool. So I'll show you a couple that I have in here. I think they should still be in here. Did I? Yes. This is a pretty, I wouldn't say it's a complete song, but it was a very good groove to start out with. This is a track that I've been working on already, and then we're just adding to it for the class. But so I have some elements in here that I want to show you, and then I want to start to make some with you. Long recordings like this, or frozen channels, right? So let me play this track here. Listen to the volume, listen to the amplitude, listen to the depth of this track, okay? And I'm gonna solo out this Atmos riser effect right here. Couple things to note. It's very quiet. It's also panned to the left. That's not just you, Nick, this time. This is actually in the track. This is meant to be that way. It's pulled to the left. Why? Why is it so quiet? Now because this is frozen, right? There was EQ in it. It is totally filtered exactly into a nice little package, pulled way down, minus 12 dB, and then panned a little to the left. Why? Why isn't that centered? And why is it so quiet? Why would I make something and keep it so quiet? So now that you can hear it, okay, pinpoint this sound here. I want you to listen to it in this mix now. Is it there? It is there. It's there. Now, that frequency that's coming through, that was very specifically cut for this stuff. So I'm going to make a couple of notes here. We've added a bunch of stuff. Okay. Now we have more, we know what we're listening for. We know how to tune and tone our tracks and shape them. So these are fitting in certain gaps. When you do stuff like, what's a good one? When you do stuff like this, right? You have to keep a mental note of the space that you're using and the space that you're allowing. Looking at this stuff, looking at just where it's laid out in your arrangement isn't good enough. As an engineer, let's take the person out of the equation right now for a second. I always have a general mental image of these puzzle pieces. So yes, we found space based on our sequence and where we place samples, but we also are shaping it based on where we have space available. So when he says that's a little bit hot in certain areas, we're going to tone that down because there's no room for it in the track. You feel me? This is all very important to understand how we're shaping our track. So when you add something like, where did it go? Like this, something so quiet and subtle. Let's look at this EQ here for a sec. Look at that little cutout in the track. Now this is taking up a little bit of space, but this is EQ'd and shaped and put in here exactly the way that I wanted to fill the left, just a little left. It's like a little drummer, just a back and stage left. Or is that stage right? Up that way on the stage, right? And when you add that into the rest of the percussion, so I'm going to keep the bass out of this one. I'm just going to add the percussion in. Okay, it's filling a little space, but every sound that you make doesn't have to be the main sound. Keep that in mind. Now, as long as you're doing it carefully, how you EQ, where you place the sounds, pay attention to it. This is all important. But when you listen to your atmosphere around you, your ambience of what's going on, this is an example of that. Okay? It's not a main sound, but it's filling space in such a nice, white, noisy kind of way. Here's another one. Let's see what this one is. This was all intentionally painted and crafted. Not the main element of the track by any means. Yeah, you can barely hear it. So this is where effects play in. There's reverb and there's a little bit of delay, but and I like that he toned down I think it was on the clav or the tom, the delay on it. I've said this 100 times. Delay can be the biggest, most destructive crutch on your track, right? And it didn't fit there, right? It didn't. It became a main sound that took away from other sounds. So how you use delay, it's not a bad thing to use delay, but just be very careful of how you use it. So in this case, I'm using the delay. I'm using some reverb, which you unfortunately can't see here, but it's in here. It's like a mist on a spring day. It's just like a little bit of dew on the grass, right? A beautiful morning day isn't complete without a little dew on the grass. But if you didn't purposefully put the dew on the grass, it's not the most perfect, beautiful. Forget it. So, okay, we're going to take this a little bit further here now. Okay, now that you can see how intentionally placed some of these dew samples are. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but let's. Where's the?
But somehow it's making sense.
It makes sense. You can picture it. You know when you just brush your hand across the grass and it just leaves you with it. Yeah, that's
something nice about it.
That's the stuff, man.
It's the stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. What else have we got here? I'm just going to show you a couple more as an example piece, okay? Very similar. Take this loop off. Now, I'm not saying to fill up your track with subtle, low, quiet pieces like this, okay? These were all designed in a sequencer, especially this one. It was designed in a sequencer to do specific things. Unfortunately, you can't see it here, but this is what this is. Just has the dew. And it fills the space really nice. That siren is not in the track. I have lost where all of your stuff is. Here we go. The new tom that you just added, was it this one? Oh, Joe Bell tom.
The synth perk? Or the actual
here.
The synth perk and then the tom where it says tom is the tom that I put. I just took the MIDI off.
Gotcha. Cool. This guy.
That one's yours.
That one's mine.
The one underneath it's mine.
Where is it?
I deleted the MIDI.
Oh, it's just in it. Oh, okay, cool. Perfect. That's great. So let's put this loop back on. I'm just going to because this is our loop, I'm just going to make the MIDI clip this long. Whoop. Okay, so it does have a little bit of that delay on it, and that's cool. But we're gonna do some tricky stuff, and we're gonna make some cool stuff. So I'm gonna listen because I wasn't really paying attention when he was doing this before. I'm gonna listen to where the new percussion in this can fit. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. That's it. I do like my toms. I do like my wood blocks too. If you've heard any of my music before, lots of cool woody sounds. And what we're gonna do is add some effects onto this. This is nicely EQ'd already. It's tuned. It's good. It's got the delay. I'm actually going to take the delay off for this example, and we're going to get a little bit crazy with it. There's some really cool stuff in here in the space audio effects racks. I just stumbled on it a little while ago, and honestly, everything you need is in Ableton. Everything you could possibly want or need is right here for you. You don't have to go and spend a lot of money on plugins and effects. I would suggest getting Portal like I did for you yesterday. That stuff is gold. But if you use your mind, use your brain a little bit, you think about what you're doing, everything that you need is actually right in here. I'm just going to grab a random one, sort of. Move this up. Yeah. Just keep it simple. Not a huge fan of this. Let's just do something random. I like it. Okay. And because it's so crazy, I'm just going to do one of these. Now, we're going to do a little resampling. I've done this before. I've done this with melodies. We're going to do it with percussion as well. And this is how we're going to create some of that ambience. Because sometimes you want that tom to come through. Sometimes we want to just have the ambience of it sitting behind. So I'm going to do a new audio channel. And I'm going to read this in from, well, let's just resample it like this. Okay. Cool. I'm going to let this I'm going to play this out twice, I think. And then I want to have a tail on the end. So I wouldn't usually loop it, but we're going to record this MIDI sequence with the effects into its own audio channel. Okay. We're going to try this once, see what we get. Because I've never used this combo before. Okay, so cool. Now I'm just going to mute this out so that we can focus on this one here. We already have, if we were to go back, like I want this tom to be clean, right? So we don't want these effects on there just like that. We can put a little bit of reverb on it maybe or something but I want that main channel to be nice and clean, and we're going to use these effects to give it that substance, or if we, the atmosphere percussion that I showed you earlier, this is where we're going to find it. Anytime you do a resample like this, anytime you take audio from another source, this becomes your own personal sample library to do whatever you want. You don't have to just use it like this. Just like what we were doing with the loops, what he was doing with the percussion loops, take whatever you want. You made this, you created it, it's sound. This is the beautiful part about electronic music, right? So let's listen to what we've got here. Because of this rhythmic space, because of the timing of it, because of where the delays fall, it creates its own rhythm. But we can recreate the recreated rhythm. So let's just I'm going to find something subtle, quiet. And we're just going to manipulate this a little bit until we find a little pattern that we like. I know this might be hard for some of you to hear if you're not using headphones or if you can't turn the volume up, but we don't want it to be that clear anyways. I'm going to do this over again, just back by this. I'm going to watch where this hits. I'm going to listen to the percussion in the track. And I'm going to actually use this to fill the space around the rest of the stuff. You're not supposed to hear this very clearly, by the way. Okay, we'll do a little fade on it and a little fade out. It's even too much. It's too much. I know it doesn't sound like much, and to put this much effort into something that you don't hear seems counterproductive sometimes, but believe me, this is the difference. This is the difference that'll make or break your music. I'm going to just EQ this. Listen to this. Okay. And let's just throw a little bit of reverb on top of that as well, just to kind of made a nice little LFO or like a side chain here. But let's do this. Why can't I hear the reverb? Am I crazy? Oh, that's why. Am I crazy? Why can't I hear that reverb?
What's the local verb?
It's just a reverb. Reverb
okay.
preset. What am I missing here?
Maybe it's just because it's so quiet, the signal. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it's so quiet.
Maybe put a utility?
No, I want it to be quiet.
True.
Okay, let's leave it. Let's just leave it then. It's so weird. Okay, whatever. Okay. So we've got the nice clean one here. We're going to throw this original delay back on now because I don't want all of these rhythmic and crazy delays in place here. And this is just going to help to keep the rhythm going. But I don't want this to be very audible. I want that tom to be audible. Okay. Let's throw a delay on the end here on the textured percussion. Okay, keeps it going. Way down, way down. Okay. Does this make sense why I'm doing this? This is how we end up with little atmospheric percussions that fill your space, right? Like this. Okay, these grow and these evolve. Now this one changes. This one kind of morphs a little bit. So let's do the same with this one that we just did. We're gonna make it morph. We're gonna change it up. And we can be a little bit reckless with how some of these hit now that we've got a little bit of a groove here. I'm doing this recklessly. Now, I would encourage you to take a little more time to do this. But we're just going to mess it up. We're just going to texturize it. Like when the hairdresser takes those texturizing scissors. We're just doing this a little bit with it. This is where the art comes in. This is the creativity. This is like the artist splashing on the canvas, right? We're just messing it up just a little bit. Okay. And let's take a saturator in on this. A bit warmer is one of my favorites. And we are going to we're going to mess with it. We're going to resample this resample, okay? We're just going to get a little wacky with it. Now, you've seen me do this in some classes. I'm going to most of you have. I'm going to slow down here for a minute because there are a couple students here, a few students that have not seen this before. So bear with me for a moment while I just explain some of this resampling, and I'm going to show you what I'm doing. Now, if you've never done this resampling before, I'm just going to go through a couple steps real quick. What I've got here, okay, let's start from the top. This first one is the tom. This is the one that Dowden did, okay? We essentially took the audio from that one through an effects processor and we layered it into a new audio track, right? That's how we ended up with this little texturizing loopy percussion, okay? I like it. I like this. Now we're going to take it one step further because we could sit here, we could fuss with it all day. I've texturized it, I've changed it up a little bit. We've got something cool, and it would be okay to leave it like this. I'm going to encourage you to put more stuff into audio. There's a fear of audio, right? There's a fear to let go of automation. If you sit here and you automate all this by hand, you sit there with your MIDI controllers, you modify it by hand and you put it in there, there's a fear of letting go of that, right? Because what if you ever want to change it? It's true. What if? But what if you could do more by just letting go and letting things be art, letting them be music, letting them be audio? So I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to be really edgy, and then I'm going to show you that you can have a safety net as well. Okay, so I'm going to do another resampling channel. I'm just going to insert a new audio channel here, and I want to listen to this. So I'm going to go here, external in, from our new textured percussion, which is, of course, 16 audio. Perfect name. And we're going to monitor it in. So what we're looking at here is 17 audio. Our new audio channel is going to read in from our texturized channel. That's called routing. We're routing the channels one into the next. And I'm going to do something in real time as it plays. So I've added this. I'm going to do a couple things. We're just going to mess around. And anyone that was in my texturizing class last month, you would have seen me do something similar to this, just not with percussion. So we're going to hit record, and I'm just going to mess with stuff while it records straight into audio. I'm going to mess with the EQ and the saturator. And we're going to bring it back down. Okay. Something like that. Doesn't look like much because it's so quiet, but now we have something new. Now you can mute that out. You can leave it if you're afraid to let go of everything into audio. That's fine. Mute this out. I'm going to close this because I would actually, I would use this new channel. We have an exact replication of what we just did. You essentially have also made a brand new sample library of little bits that you can pick and choose from if you want to choose to do that, right? You can play with this. But this is that sample. I would do this, and I would actually loop this. I would just let that go through the whole track. And as I mentioned before, when I have, 4 or 5 minute long sequences, this is how I do it. I would do this. This is only for the sake of the example. I will sit here with my gear, whether it's a melody, bass line, or percussion. I will sit here for 4 minutes straight, 5 minutes straight, 6 minutes straight, and just move the knob a little bit, right? I will play with the saturator. I will play with the reverb just a little bit. And this is another way of creating that subtle, subconscious, non-looping loops, right? This is a way that you have to give credit to the human mind, that it is smarter than you think it is, that it's smart, so smart that it doesn't even know it's smart, right? But those little subtle details, the little thing that we just did with this little 20-second clip, just adding the saturation, bringing the EQ up and down, the brain knows you're evolving. So whether you do it with a 20-second clip, a 5-second clip, a 5-minute clip, these are the details, okay? And something like this that's so subtle, yes, we could just hit loop, and we could just loop it along, right? There might be a little glitch at the beginning, but whatever. It's an example, okay? You may not hear this, but this is when I keep referencing your room in the ambience that's happening around you, that's constantly evolving. Your brain needs this. This is how you make it in music, but you have to intentionally do it. You have to go out of your way to make things not normal. Otherwise, your songs will sound robotic and unnatural. They will just not have that groove. It won't speak to people on that human level, that imperfect level. This is the difference between somebody that makes tracks and somebody that makes music. You understand the human mind in how it attaches to music. Whether you are a creative type or an engineer, you're a mathy science, painter, accountant, whatever. The brain attaches to sounds, movement, groove very differently, and you have to tap into that human element, that imperfect element of the subconscious mind. These are the ways that you can do that. That little bit. Now, imagine you just done that for 4 minutes of the track. And as I did in the textured class, I did this. I've done it so much. And if you're a DJ, you're going to be better at this than a newer producer. But you, as a DJ, I'll give you an example, okay? I think I'm going to be done in here, so I'm just going to do it here. As a DJ, you naturally, if you've been doing it for many, many years, you naturally tap into the entry point of a sequence, right? You naturally know without even paying attention. Like new DJs have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 until and then you hear the transitions. But if you've been DJing for a while, you naturally know where the long sections start and end. 64 beats, 128 beats. It just sinks into your subconscious. That's what we're doing here. We are, you can sit and you can modify that saturator. You can play with the effects. You can manipulate it in a resampled channel. And in the texturized class, I did that for like a 2 or 3, 4 minute segment. And you can imagine building this saturation over 4 minutes into your first break, right? If we did that, yes, you can do it with automation. Yes, you can do that over time and you can program it in Ableton. I'm going to encourage you to practice thinking outside the box and working it with a natural flow of your hand, counting, manipulating, and working it so it's never the same way twice. You just said, I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna challenge you to do this. Okay, the more you can naturally allow sound to happen in a never before seen way, the better, more natural your music is gonna be. Okay, so that's my challenge to you. Do more of this. Anything you want to add in on there?
Yeah, that was really great. It's really cool that I do this too in some of my tracks. I definitely do this with a lot of my pads. I'll record a pad and I'll use like the freeze function on Reverb, and I'll just freeze it, record it for 30 seconds to a minute, and then do the same thing, go in with an EQ, switch some knobs around and all that stuff. And it's just to like you said, like tap into the subconscious. I just wanted to note that this might seem a little overwhelming for some of you guys, but it really becomes second nature, and it becomes, if it seems overwhelming now, it, for me at least, became more exciting. And even now when I'm seeing this, like knowing that this is something that I do, and I love Tim's music, and I have like, so that I became a huge fan of him from the first track I heard of his. So now coming in and seeing that he's doing stuff that I do is really like encouraging for me as well. But yeah, just to reiterate, it seems overwhelming because it's, a lot of things that you might not be thinking about, but that's, at least for me, it was exciting, and it still is exciting to know that it's not as easy as just programming. And then when you program your drum tracks and you program your synths and everything, and it doesn't sound as good as the pros, these are the reasons why. That's exciting, because now that these tiny little things make a huge difference. And it's actually pretty wild how even in the examples before, just that little shaker, that little groove shaker adds so much depth, but on its own it doesn't. But then in the context, it adds such a level of like, just it glues it all together. It feels more full. It feels like a more professional track, and it doesn't take much. It's not that you're lacking so much. It's sometimes that you're just lacking the tiny little things that you're going to learn over a long period of time, or by doing things like taking this class and learning from us who have gone through the motions and have learned from our own mistakes and from others how to do this. So,
and I think if you're at the level where this isn't in your grasp yet, if there's one major takeaway to this, it's that everything is intentional. And if you're just coming into this, or you're just finding your legs in music production, or even if this is a fresh perspective for you, it's a misconception to believe that, and I'm stereotyping a little bit here, but it's a misconception to believe that electronic music is done by a computer, right? And it's true, it's done within a computer, it's done in the box, it's done with software. But despite all of that, it's still up to you to take every detail into consideration. Yes, there's tools. It drives me nuts that there are so many tools out there that so many people want to jump on, to make things easier. Things like Machine, things like, certain sequencers, effects processors, all of these things where you don't wanna, or you don't know how. So you don't. So you're looking for those shortcuts. You're looking for those crutches. You're looking for those tools that will make the music easier. There's so many things out there where you just you just push a button and sound comes out and it's cool. It doesn't make good music. It's understanding the nuances of making those sounds. So if this does seem a little overwhelming to you right now, that's okay. If you're just DJing right now and you were toying with the idea of getting into music production, that's okay. Understand that the good music is so specifically made. This section, for example, this was a 15-second section. Do you know how little time that is in a 7-8 minute track? So what's the natural instinct? Well, I'm just gonna loop it and drag it across 6 minutes, right? And that's because you want it. Because what? What's the rush? What's the rush to finish this track if it's not great? Right? If you can't get to that caliber where people go, how the hell did you do that? Why are you rushing it anyways? Take your time. I know there's a balance of frustration of never getting there and taking your time too much where you're not being creative, right? This is what comes in time. So anyways, if you take one thing away, it's that we are doing things so very specifically that's what makes. There's no friggin' robot. There's no AI to make this track for you. You know what I mean? So I'm going to pass it back. I know we're running a little bit late. I hope that's okay. I hope you're okay back there. You still awake, Marcin? Nice. He's still here. He's still awake. We're running over a little bit, but I think you had one more thing that you could cover a little bit.
Yeah, I have a couple little tips that I think are going to... they're a bit technical, but they can elevate some of the things that you do, and they're quick tips that you can add to your tracks that... can make them just sound immediately better and more interesting, and it'll probably excite you. So I can do them pretty quick.
The good news is that there haven't been a lot of questions. Usually our Q&A is filled with questions that have come up through the class. So okay, cool. Either that's a really good or a really bad sign. I'm not sure. So if you have questions, please ask them now. Feel free to ask them now, because we do, we're gonna go up to probably about 5 o'clock. So that's about 35, 40 minutes away. So let's cover this, and if you have questions, we're going to answer them at the end as best as we can. Cool.
We'll swap-a-roo again.
Swap it out. It's so awkward. We have to find a changed scene change.
Yeah, like a transition. We'll be right back.
Let's do.
Okay.
Let's do you.
Okay, so let me see what we could do.
Let's just check this real quick. Is this I kind of shrunk that.
So while Tim's doing that, I'm gonna start with something that I talk about. If you've seen any of my videos previously, I probably have done it in my videos because it's one of my favorite techniques, and it's just like the stereo width technique, or the Haas effect. So it was. I don't remember the exact year, but like maybe 100 years ago or something, there was this guy named like Hubert Haas, and he essentially figured out that anything that you hear between a certain time frame, so around 7 to 10 milliseconds, our ears humans, our ears perceive sound as one sound. So below 7-8 milliseconds, we hear it as one sound. But as soon as we start to go past that 7 or 8 millisecond mark, we can hear sound separately if it's the same sound played from left to right or right to left or anywhere kind of in between. So if we have, two people clapping directly left and right of us, but they're clapping the exact same time, it might sound as one sound. But if there's somebody to the left and then somebody to the right, and they're clapping just slightly different, then we will perceive that as two sounds, and it'll sound really wide. And that's a whole nother discussion about stereo width and imaging and stuff. But you can do this with your hats, and it can sound really, really interesting really quick. So hats, claps, percussive elements. I'll do that on probably this hat here. So you just take a delay. You can throw it on there. And you put the feedback to 0, because if you put it over 0, you're going to hear it more than once. And then the dry wet is going to be 100%. So if I play this now, it's going to have a lot of, it'll have just that hat, and then, which actually kind of sounds cool on its own. But I don't want that delay. I want it really, really quick. So go to the time from the sync, and we can go up to 7 milliseconds, but we have to turn the chain off here, because if we don't, then we're going to have 2 channels and it's not going to work. So the right channel I'll put to, let's say, like 15 milliseconds. And if you want it from right to left or left to right, you can change this one to the 15 and back and forth. Okay, and now we can take a listen. So you'll definitely hear this on headphones, and you'll hear this. Just want to make sure. Tim, we're in stereo, right? Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure. You won't hear this in mono. If you are in mono, which I can show you really quickly, in mono, it's going to sound like 2 really quick repeating. And we get a little bit of phase cancellation. So that's something we have to be careful of, that when we're down mixing to mono, we get a little bit of that weird phaziest sound. So it's good to check in mono. And if we're getting that, we could just move this up or down a couple milliseconds and it should work. That sounds a little better. And we put it back to stereo. So yeah, if you're listening on headphones, okay, there's a question I'm going to get to after. So when you're listening in headphones, you can really, really hear it. It sounds much wider. It's more interesting. When you're listening on the monitors, you'll be able to hear it as well. You can actually kind of hear this sometimes if you're sitting like too far left or right to a speaker, because you'll hear one faster than the other and it'll sound wider. And that's what stereo is hearing 2 separate signals at different times, and our ears perceiving them. But once we go past, once we go high enough, you'll start to hear, you'll hear 2 hats instead of the one just sounding wide. Right around there, I hear it. Now it just sounds like you're taking one hat and panning it far to the left and one to the right and then hitting them separately. So sweet spot is right around here. And then what you can actually do is just save this as Haas effect. And then anytime that you want to use this, just search Haas and you can just throw it on. You can do this with percussive elements as well, but I definitely suggest trying it on higher frequency instruments, because if you do it on lower frequency instruments like toms and stuff, it can cause phase cancellation a little bit easier, or a little bit more. And if you want to maybe do it, taking this one step further, we can try it on a clap. So I'll grab the Haas. I'm going to put it on the entire clap, and then I'm going to turn this EQ down a little bit. I'm going to boost the low end a little bit. So this is just to show you what I'm doing. This clap has a little bit of low end. I'm pushing it up so it's a little bit more obvious. Say you wanted to do this onto your hat, but you didn't want to use it on that low end. This is also a trick that I was going to talk about, is kind of using both mono and stereo in the same sound. So having part of the sound in mono for it coming straight through the mix, for down mixing to mono, you're not going to lose it with phase cancellation. And you can do that with the Haas effect too by using this filter. So now we're only getting that high end. So only the high end is going to have that stereo delay, but I want to make sure I'm not doing it on the whole sound. So I would probably duplicate whichever clap I want to do it to. I'll do it to that one. Actually, Undo that. I'm just going to, actually, I'll just drop it right on that clap. That's fine. But you could duplicate this clap and just add it to there. Make sure I didn't add 2 there. Okay. I'll take that low end off again. So now we're getting that stereo delay, that Haas effect, only in the high end. So we're getting a nice stereo width on the top, but then we still have this other clap that's a bit lower. It's a small detail, but it can add a bit of crispiness to the high end while we're retaining the mono signal in the low end. And I'm going to probably just do this last tip because I think it revolves around this as well, and that's using mid-side and left and right EQ. And this might be a little out of reach for some people, something that you don't need to worry about so much right now, but it is a cool tip, and it kind of does the same effect as this Haas effect. And it's something that I've been using a lot lately, actually, in my track. So let's grab this clap again. I'm just going to turn it up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to change this EQ into mid-side mode. Actually, we'll do left-right first. So left-right mode is going to allow you to control both the left and the right side of your image with the EQ. So if we click on this L, it's going to go from left to right. So you can make things sound like they're going from left to right, right to left, or push something in the left more and less in the right, and then it will sound wider without actually spreading it so far. And it's just a different way to achieve that width. So I'm going to change this to cut this off. I'm going to cut off, just really simple, cut off like half the sound from the left side. I'll just solo. Actually, that's fine. And then do the opposite in the right. So I'll change this to right, and I'll cut off all this from here over, so you can really hear what's going on. So if you take off one headphone or turn off one speaker, you're only going to hear the low end in one and the high end in the other. And doing this a bit more tastefully, we can back these off a little bit. And I will duplicate this. I'm just going to take that low end out. So this is just to take the clap low end out, and then I'm going to turn this off and on. So it sounds like we're losing a bit of the high end. I'm going to boost this up a little bit more. And compensate, I'm going to push the left up a little bit as well. So I'll use this EQ to kind of push up the high end, compensate. So if you listen closely, you can hear that it sounds like it's kind of going from left to right, like it's kind of going across your ears, across, like almost like you're clapping through one ear and into the other. And that is just another tip to add even more of that interesting subconscious feel. Not so much organic, but it's going to make the song sound a little bit wider without having to rely on stereo delay. So the Haas effect is one way you could approach it. Left and right is another. And then we'll do the mid side really quickly as well. So mid side, same kind of concept. You can take out from the middle of the image, which is going to be mostly mono, if not all mono. And then the side is going to be your wide image, the stereo image. So if you wanted this clap to sound a little bit more strong in the middle and you don't want that side information as much, then you can go into the side and you can start to remove some of that. And I'll turn this one off for now. And the mid, we can push that up. So we still get the high end, but it's not as wide. And then we can do the inverse. Maybe we want a really wide clap with a lot of sparkle and shine in the high end, we can maybe reduce a little bit of the mid on the high end, and then boost on the sides. And this is probably the more ideal situation for a clap. And if you did this just with a regular EQ, turned up the the high end so that it sounds sharper and a bit more wider, I guess, in the high end because you're boosting that high. But then you're also just going to be boosting the mid and the sides, so the whole sound is going to be louder, and it might just sound a little bit too high. It might just be a little bit too much of that high end. You might start to clip. Doing it this way, you can pull down the mid, so you're taking a little bit of room, and then you're boosting the highs on the sides so that it's focusing the highs on the wider sections of the mix, and then you're kind of allowing for that mono signal to also push through with your snares, your claps, your hi-hats, or anything. And I think that's all we have time for. Do you guys have any questions about I know I covered it pretty quickly, the mid side, the left, right. It's honestly something that once you start practicing with it, it'll make sense. Try it on pretty obvious sounds like claps and snares. Do you use it? Percussion plus like a reverb. Do you want to go to questions over the whole thing?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So Tim's gonna come back.
Hello. You can sit in the captain's chair.
Oh, you got it?
Cool.
Okay, cool. The captain's chair. Got my
Yeah.
captain hat.
Nice.
I'm wearing a hat because my hair has not been cut in way too long, and it's just like a big frizz ball.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. Okay, so something that we were going to talk about today was going to be send and returns, because they open up tons of possibilities for parallel processing. So essentially when we're processing in, I'll show you really quick. Is it this one for this?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll show you really quickly. Again, this is serial processing. We're going from left to right. The sample's here, then we're EQing it with this EQ, and then we're EQing it with this EQ. So this EQ is dealing with anything that this EQ has already touched, and so on. So it's step by step. That sound, every step of the way is going to sound different. Whereas in parallel processing is having multiple chains or layers of sound or tracks where you might not be affecting one, but you're affecting the second one differently, and then the third one differently, and so on. So with send and returns, I'll put this back on.
Yep. Wide
cam. Hello. With send and return tracks, you can open up a lot of possibilities for parallel processing, because you have the original sound, a clap, for example. Oh, hello. There we go. Good morning. You have the original sample, and then you have the return track, and you're sending information there, and you can add either a little bit or a lot and still retain that original sound. So you're not worried about, am I compressing this too much? Is it too saturated? There's too much reverb? Because then your original sound still comes through with that quality of the original sound, that dry sound, and then you're adding, like Tim was saying, the icing, or like the butter, or the dew on the grass. Yeah. The dew it's just there to complement the sound and to kind of be on top of the sound rather than totally submerge the sound, if that makes sense. So to answer the question, which was, I think it's up a little bit.
Do you use send returns?
Oh, there it is. Okay. I usually use one reverb on, I'll have a drum reverb, a synth reverb, a long drum reverb, and then some auxiliary ones with like really big delays and stuff. And the drum reverb, I'll usually, I'll put reverb on certain sounds for sound design purposes. Like if my shakers need to be further back in the mix and I want them really, really spacey and aired out, I'll put a reverb. But then I'll still send that one to the same drum reverb. And I'll do that with all my instruments so that all the drums sound like they're from the same room. They're in the same place. And just dialing in different amounts of reverb to each of, from each of those sounds into the send. Or into the return. Is that what you do too?
I actually don't.
Okay. All right. Well,
I
What do you do?
actually don't use send and returns at all.
at all?
At all.
Do you just buses and
I use, so I'll do like what I did there with the routing. I'll route it into a second channel if I want the first channel clean. So I'll just
in the
in the in the
tracks.
arrangement, yeah. I used to use send and returns. This is a totally personal preference, right? This is how artists. His way is definitely probably more industry accepted because it just like what he said. It gives everything the same feel, and I like to tailor each sound with effects specifically. I also found for like rendering out stuff, I just preferred to have it right there. It's like a brain thing for me. And so no, I don't.
Okay. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I've done that too. I've done usually when I resample, I'll do one where I duplicate the track, add all the effects, and then. But that's pretty much what you did there too. But I don't use like more. I use like my synth reverb is kind of there as another room reverb to put maybe 10% of my synths in, but I usually don't even use it. And then my drum reverb is it's just for all the drums, and that's pretty much it. I know some people use like lots of return tracks, tons of parallel processing. I usually use my parallel processing in the tracks, like in the actual individual tracks instead of using returns.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's so Nick had another question. When you add those 4, 8, 16 bar small changes to the MIDI patterns, how do you know which elements to apply that to? Is it better to do the bass, stabs, claps, or everything? For me, it would be very situational on where I would want to do that. In this particular case, the track had sub bass, but we needed a more audible rhythmic bass, and so it worked there to extend the break. This is also genre specific, okay? It's also artist specific and also what we already created specific. And in this particular case, this track is very proggy, very progressive, very flowing, so we can just we know that we're just gonna let this ride for a few minutes, and that's where that would apply there. But to answer your question, it can apply on anything. And to be honest, the better you get at this technique, the more you can use it on different things, right? I would all just picture a band on stage, right? Picture they're doing a more ad lib session. They're jamming or something like that. They each know their part very well. They know the style that they're trying to do. They have an audience that they're trying to play for, and they are going to ad lib certain sections. Jimi Hendrix, he's ad libbing Star Spangled Banner, right? In that situation, it worked. The better you get at your craft, the more you can do it. And the longer you can make your loops, the longer you can make those segments to make it stand out. And so I suggest learn on everything. It's situational.
Yeah. It's not a yes or no, or like not, I guess, like an easy question, like a yes or no, like, yeah, do it this way, do it that way. It's situational, and it's something that you'll learn a little bit every track. And that's why it's important to finish tracks, because sometimes you're forced to make decisions you don't want to make, or forced to work on tracks you don't want to work on. But finishing them, you learn from that. So even if it's, if your track is not going where you want to go and you want to start over, that's fine. But if you're so close to finishing it and you're just like, you know what, it's not my best track, I'm going to forget about it, maybe just take an hour or two and just try to finish it and just wrap it all up, because then you have that completed track. You can look back on it in a month or two or 3 or 4 months and look back and be like, wow, this was, something that I've learned so much from. And if you're forced to do stuff to try and fill gaps, like something's not working and you don't know what it is, because that's something that I've run into a million times, where I'm like 3/4 way through and I'm like, this is just not good. Like, it's just, what am I doing here? I can't make it work, and I need to stop forcing it. But then when I continue to work on it, I'm not going to make those mistakes again, because I'm so tired of hearing it, first of all, but I learned that won't work for next time. So I can't, sometimes you can save it, but most of the time you can't. And if it doesn't, like, a lot of the time that you write your best tracks, I'm sure you agree, is like they write themselves. Like, you start and you're going along and you can't even keep up, because you're like, this idea. And those are some of your best tracks. And then sometimes you write for hours and nothing good comes. And then sometimes you have to accept that. And sometimes something clicks and it starts to work well too, right?
I agree
So-
with you. The finishing tracks is important.
Yeah.
Because you can be so frustrated some days and it just doesn't come.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, in particular, you're getting to that stage now where you're at a level now where you're identifying when it's not happening and when you need to push through that hurdle, right? But to finish, I've ripped you apart many different ways with feedback, right? And it's easy to put that track on the shelf and say, "Screw this! It's no good." Tim hates it. He hates me. He hates the track. He hates everything about this. I'm giving up and I'm quitting. That's easy to do, but you have seen this pushing through. You're learning. You're growing, and from where you were a couple of years ago till now is like a whole different planet because you fought through those frustrating moments and you finished those tracks. It hurts like a good workout.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's you know what, like, I'm guilty of is I would send tracks to people that I knew were like not less honest, but they were less biased. Like, I would have a track that I knew it was okay, but I wouldn't send it to Tim because I know that he'd be like, "You could do better," and I would like send it to like somebody who's not even where I'm at in my production career, and they'd be like, "Yeah, it's good," and it's like, "Yeah, I like that, I need that," and
it's
then
verification, it's validation.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's so true, man. That's super honest to say.
yeah, and it's easy to do that. It's easy to send it and get that good validation because like it hurts. It sucks when you're excited and someone's like, "Don't be excited," because it like you think you wrote something good, but be excited that you're learning. And you know what? Sometimes you just gotta send it to people. If you want to send it to someone that's gonna give you positive feedback, also take that with a grain of salt because they might just be not intentionally giving you feedback that could be hurtful. You know, like, "This song's so good," and you're like, "Oh, sweet," and you just, you go to release it, you start sending it to labels, and you're wasting your time. And then I've released songs that I'm not proud of because I thought they were good in the moment, and now they kind of haunted me.
Bro, this is so true. This is such a bane of our profession. That's why my wife loves this music, but she doesn't want to hurt my feelings, right? She knows good music, but she doesn't know what goes into it. If I'm excited about it, well, she's going to be excited about it. And and a lot of my friends are like that. I've stopped sending music to certain people. You have to find the one or two that will tear you apart no matter what.
Yeah, in the best way possible. Like,
yes, as
for
long
your
as-
own good.
If they're not dicks about it, like this track that we're actually looking at here, Marcin did that to me the other day. Like, this melody is not working. I'm not joking. We came in, we totally
In the background.
Yeah, we totally stripped it down. We totally stripped the main melody apart. He's like, "Let's try this. Let's try this." That's the feedback. And was I disappointed that I had spent a day on that melody and I'm never going to see it again? Nope. Because it's constructive, good feedback, and that's going to push it along. As soon as we started moving it forwards, we're back on track, man. And I showed Trish and I showed my other buddy this track, exactly what you said. I sent it to them because honestly, I didn't have somebody in that moment. So I sent, to these other people, and they're like, "Yeah, that's really great."
Yeah,
And
so
that-
proud of you.
It has screwed me over so many times. It's not even funny.
It hurts in the moment, and I took a break from releasing because I wanted to only put out the stuff that I'm happiest with, and I've had like maybe a third or a quarter of my tracks I'm actually happy with, and then the rest they're still sitting on the shelf, just like, maybe I'll release them, maybe not. Like, if the right label comes around. Then there's tracks that are so close, but I can't land it. Like, it's just, there's something about them, and it takes a lot for me to drop a track, like to scrap it, but it's so liberating when you do, and you're like, you know what? I know I can do better than this. And even though this is a mediocre track, I can do better. And when you finally decide on that, you know what, I'm good, I can do better. I've tried so many different variations, A track, B track, like all these different things to it, and you're just not overly excited about it, then it's liberating to let it go. And when you get that hard feedback sometimes, it's like you said, you just spend all day on that melody, and at first it probably sucks to be like, you know what, I have to start over, or I have to get rid of my hard work. But then when you do something better, you're so happy. You're like, I'm so glad that I didn't just settle for less because it was easier, right? And
Absolutely
it's a hard truth, and you know, you can send it to me and you can send it to Tim, obviously, post in the group, and we're gonna try our best to give you that hard feedback in the best way possible, because we know what it sounds like, because we've had both. We've had the bad feedback, and we've had the feedback that hurts, and then we've had the feedback that hurts, but it hurts good.
Feedback is an art, both to give and to receive.
That's a good point.
Not everybody is able to give it, and especially not everybody is able to receive it. But I think the giving and then the taking is a two-way street, right? Wording matters. Okay, you just be careful if you're getting into that world. If you are the giver of feedback, you want to be honest. They really do want your honesty, and it's not necessarily about not wanting honest feedback. It's about how it's presented, and so the group is good. Just share it. If you're not comfortable sharing it with the bigger group, share it here. I trust every single person in this group to give good, honest feedback, and just know that everybody's here that's in this class. They're here for the right reasons. I can't think of one person that is here for the wrong reasons, and so you can trust. And this is an art, you know, of growth. But find the one or two people. I guarantee you, there's somebody in this group or in the True Peak group that you will grow with. Right, my biggest growth spurts as an artist, it was only with one person that I gave my music to, and we ripped each other to shreds. It's so important. So important. I don't know if we want to we're getting a little bit close to the end of the time to get into kick stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the kick
I just
stuff.
thought of that one. Yeah, I think it's going to be a big set. We could sum it up.
Yeah, we could try and some light tips on it. Most important thing in my opinion is choosing proper samples. Like, don't just grab a random kick and try, you know, there's so many videos and so many tips that are saying layering kicks, which is great. Like layering kicks, or using, I know Tim teaches to use kick, the VST. But yeah, layering is great, but people focus too much on grabbing just 3 random kicks or kicks that don't sound great together. And because they're layering it, they really try it. And you can do that, but it is time consuming. And a lot of the time, like I said, I'll do that and I'll be like, I want to layer them, and I'll grab 3 or 4 kicks and layer them. And you're listening to it for so long that eventually it starts to sound okay. And then you listen to like a pro track and you're like, wow, my kick does not sound nearly as good. And then you go back to your kicks and you just sample a few more and they sound way better. And I just grab that. Like, grabbing proper sampled kicks, and just, you don't need to buy like a huge pack or go and buy like 5 packs or anything. There's, you know, if you have 10 or 12 kicks that you can choose from and then mix match them with the layering and stuff, that's great too. I know Sebastian Leger, he uses the same kick in every track. Every single track he does, and he just changes the bottom end of it, which is, I didn't know. And then you go to his tracks and you're like, he does. So, and yeah, just EQing a lot, but not taking away from the quality of the kick is really hard, and it's just a lot of practice.
I think there's 2 things to consider. One thing that I'll do, just a little tip. Now, I do use kick mostly, but I also do use sampled kick drums as well. They will. So if I want a certain sound, if I'm inspired by a certain track, and I want to model my track after that style, I will go and look for a pack that includes that specific style. You know, I will go to a dark techno sample pack. You know what I mean? Like if I want that edge, and I will grab just for that kick. You know what I mean? The other thing too is, like we were talking about before, if you don't know exactly what you want to sound like top to bottom, and most of us, we don't know when we're sitting at our computers what we're going to do, you will place a kick at the beginning, which is cool for timing and to set the track on course. And as you start to assemble the bass lines, the melodies, the percussion, the frequencies mix and match and mess each other up to the point where your kick is not recognizable anymore, right? And whether you're clean or not, the kick that you started with may not be the kick that's appropriate later on.
That's a good point.
So he is I think he's bang on. He's saying what I say about my kicks. I don't layer my kicks. Very rarely would I ever layer my kicks. It's probably just the wrong sample. It's the wrong kick, and you'll find exactly that because your track evolves and it changes over time. So I would suggest starting there without getting into, unless you want to get into this stuff. Now this is a whole different world of elite shaping, elite sound shaping. There are artists out there that take so much. If you use kick, the plug-in, they don't think you're a real producer, right? Because you haven't crafted that kick from a waveform from scratch. These are the modular dudes. These are the scientists that enjoy the math and the physics of music more than the emotional side of it. Not necessarily true, but they love the techie geeky stuff so much that you are not. If you didn't make that hat from scratch, you're not a real artist, right? There is that level, and I am the opposite. I will.
Same.
I will not spend my time on the kicks because I will work on the effects, the melodies, and that side. And that's shaped our path in the industry, to be honest. That's why we make the music that we do.
It's more expressive. You can make a kick. You can spend 6 hours making the perfect kick, but then can you write a good track? Like that kick is going to sound good in the track, but what people care about at the end of the day, the listeners, the audience, the club. Well, the club cares about the kick too, but having that really good kick is only going to go so far. And these guys that they perpetuate that image of has to be perfect and from machines and not just using things like kick or samples and stuff. They could write good tracks as well, but that kick is that perfect kick they make is not going to bring them as far as a track that has an okay kick, but it tells a great story, is being played out so often because it's a really, really good track. So it's, of course, kick is super important, but it's not it's not as important as the creativity that comes after it. And I actually find that I write better music with a good kick. Like if I can really, and that all comes down to the groove, right? The punchiness of the kick, and it's punching through, and I can feel the energy when I'm writing, and it helps me personally write. Maybe it does for you as well. But when I have bad sounding kicks or flat or anything, sometimes they do pull away from my creative side of things, which is again another whole other topic.
Yep. So yeah, the kick. I mean, we're not against shaping this stuff and toning this stuff, but it is a whole other topic. So cool.
Yeah.
We have about 4 minutes left. Any last minute questions? I am curious about this format. Okay, this is the first time that we've done something side by side. I know that there's a couple of hiccups and glitches along the way. I know it's not that cool that we're getting up and moving keyboards. This is all in the works. Okay, this is kind of a trial section, which we're just testing our grounds, right? I know that the platform is not seamless yet. We're working on it. But how do you like this interaction? We could have definitely left him at home with his own computer, and we could have done the side-by-side thing like John and I have done in the past. Everything's possible. But I want you to let me know, whether now or in private. You can send me a message and let me know of anything that you liked or you didn't like. I can take feedback the best of them. And speaking of feedback, so please be honest, and I hope you got something valuable from this class. I definitely thank Dowden for being here a lot. It's we've been in lockdown in Canada. Ontario, Toronto is still in almost a top tier lockdown, so don't tell the officials that he's here, but it's crazy, man. We are a first world country and we're still locked down, and it's crazy. So I am so grateful that he can come here. Where most of us are vaccinated, I think, in the city here and in the country, but still these lockdowns are out of control. No other country is like us right now. So I'm happy that he can come in. I'm happy that Marcin comes in. And I'm happy that you guys can join us for these classes. Definitely, if you haven't already, go check out his music. I think if you like my music, you will definitely enjoy his music. And he has grown so much in the last few years. It's absolutely incredible. I think the first time I worked with you was I had Slideways, the label, my older label, and I think I signed you on
signed
there.
The track, yeah. I was living in Australia. I literally, guys, before Tim and I ever worked together, like I said, I was a huge fan of his music, and I literally remember I was fangirling. I was in Australia, and I just got done working, and I was in this I was on a farm in this weird cubicle shower thing, And I remember I messaged him before my shower, and I sent him these demos. I think it was 2 tracks. And I just remember specifically, he was like, "Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna do something with one of these tracks." I was so excited, and like the fact that I'm here now working with Tim is like so like it's like meta. Like it's crazy to me that I've grown as an artist, and that he's also taken things and made it possible for me through Slideways, through Joof, and helping me connect with John, and helping me with even connecting through this and connecting to you guys as well. So I do really, really appreciate it.
It's awesome.
And it should be motivational for you guys that, like you said, like a few years ago, like that track, I look back on now and I'm like, I've come so far. Still was a cool track, but I'm miles ahead of that now.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that. And it's really cool to know that I've grown so much, and that's just proof, and that you guys definitely can too. And like I say to my students, and I say to my like to you guys as well, that doing this proves that you're in it for the right reasons, that you're passionate enough to invest your own time, and you're going beyond what other producers are doing, or even considering doing. A lot of producers would never take lessons or courses, and I don't know if it's a pride thing or it's a financial thing or what, but this is proving to you and to everybody in this group and to Tim and I that you are going to be the ones that have the ability to surpass other producers who aren't doing things like this.
I do find one thing that, you know, is the backbone, but besides the fact that I actually care about growing this industry, I really care about doing it the right way. I let blah 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 blah. He's right about you dedicating your time, doing a fee to pay. Like the people that I have done this for free with, it's cool that you've got YouTube videos, but it's easy to turn on a YouTube video and just wash in one ear and out the other, right? The dedication to it is just like this. So thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for the ongoing support for True Peak, and thank you. I'm really, really happy to have the community building and growing so much, and building each other as much as you are. So thank you for being a part. Thank you to Dowden for being here. Thank you so much. I have fun. We're going to shut it down, guys. If you have any questions, concerns, hit me up, and I will be happy to answer them. I want to hear what you can do with your music now going forward. So the video will be taken. I'm going to leave it up on YouTube for a little bit if you want to go back and keep watching it. I'll leave it up here for about 24 to 48 hours if you want to keep watching it on this link. Otherwise, it will be taken down, and it will only be available through the True Peak website, because you purchased an enrollment to the course, so it'll be available through there. So you'll have to sign into True Peak for you to be able to see the video, and that'll be up there probably tonight or tomorrow. But this link will be available for a little bit longer. Okay, cool. Anything else? Just hit me up offline. But thank you guys. Have a great night, morning, evening, wherever you are. Bye, Marcin.
Thanks a lot, guys.
See you guys.